Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. I am Jody Grunwald. This week, my guest is Helen Archontou, Chief Executive Officer, YWCA Northern New Jersey. Helen is focused on guiding the YWCA into its next century of living its mission to eliminate racism, empower women, and strengthen communities. Helen has achieved many accolades in her career. In 2019, she received the Crime Victims' Rights Award from the New Jersey Office of the Attorney General and the Excellence Award of Victims' Justice. She was also named among the powerful women of New Jersey in Senator Loretta Weinberg's 2019, 2020, and 2021 Women Power list. In 2020, Helen received the Top 50 Women in Business from NJ Biz and the Top 25 Women in New Jersey Award from Leading Women Entrepreneurs. In 2021, Helen was recognized by Commerce and Industry Association of New Jersey as a women leader on the rise. You will hear during this interview someone who is insightful, passionate, and has a true calling to serve and support others who are in need of continued advocacy. We talk about her background and growing up in Greek culture. She says her superpowers come from her experience in being in the performing arts. No and can't are not an option in Helen's vocabulary. She believes anything is possible when you are tenacious and determined. In order to keep herself balanced and connected, we talk about some of the rituals she uses, like positive self-talk, self-kindness, and the value of visualization. Helen is an adjunct professor at Montclair State University since 2005 in the School of Social Work. This was an insightful conversation with a woman who is making a difference every day. On March 24th, Today is the Day is launching the inaugural International Changemakers Forum titled Challenge Yourself, Disrupt the Status Quo. Learn more about how you can connect with incredible everyday changemakers, CNN heroes, authors, TEDx speakers, entrepreneurs, and more. To purchase tickets and to learn more, go to todayisthedayliveit.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Today is the Day Changemakers YouTube channel, stream this podcast on all streaming sites, comment, like, and share, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Today is the Day Live It. The views expressed by all Today is the Day Changemakers podcast guests are their own. Their appearance on the Today is the Day Changemakers podcast does not imply any endorsement of them or any entity that they represent. Have a great week, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. I am Jody Grunwald, and as I say every single week, I get to interview the most incredible humans who are doing great work somewhere in their corner of the world, and their impact stays either there or grows out beyond, just within their space. And today I have Helen Archontou. Hi, Helen. How are you?
Hello.
Hello. Did I say your last name right?
You did, Archontou. Perfect.
You gave me the phonetic and I worked it out. It was great. It was easy. So I'm so glad to have you here with me today. And I'm going to do what I always do, Helen. I'm going to read your bio, and then we're going to get into a great conversation, and people are going to learn more about the incredible work that you do and the person that you are. So Helen is the CEO of the YWCA of Northern New Jersey. As Chief Executive Officer since 2011, Helen is focused on guiding YWCA Northern New Jersey into its next century of living its mission to eliminate racism, empower women, and strengthen communities. Helen has overseen the development of a continuum of programs to support women and families in every stage of life, as well as to raise awareness and take action to end racial and social injustice. So important. In 2019, the organization expanded its service area to Essex, Hudson, Morris, and Passaic, in addition to Bergen County, and changed its name to YWCA Northern New Jersey. Helen served as a state-appointed member of the New Jersey State Task Force on Campus Sexual Assault and is a co-chairperson of the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking Legislative Committee and a member of the Nonprofit Steering Committee of Commerce and Industry Association of New Jersey. Helen, I can go on and on. It says you were an NJ Biz Top 25 Women in New Jersey Award winner, Leading Women Entrepreneur winner. Your bio goes on and on. Incredible work that you're doing. So congratulations and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for reading it.
I could have gone on. There was more, but you know what? I want us to go into these things together and more about all of the accolades that are put on this page. So let's start with who you are as a person first, and let's talk about where you grew up, and we'll go from there.
Well, let's see. I mean, I grew up I'm a pretty much a Jersey girl, through and through. Although I started my early, first 2 years of life in Manhattan. But my parents quickly came over the bridge. I grew up in Fort Lee, which is Bergen County, like truly over the bridge. They didn't go too far over the bridge. They literally drove over and stopped. There. Which was a very interesting place to grow up because it was a diverse community. And because it was so close to Manhattan, I probably spent more time in the city growing up than I ever really did in New Jersey. And it wasn't until I got to college, because I did go to a state school, that I really engaged with New Jerseyites. I probably up to that point, everything we did, when we went to the movies, when we went to the doctors, when we went, out to restaurants, we went to museums, we went to theater, it was all in Manhattan. When I was growing up, everything, was over the bridge. So, it was I can't complain. I've had a very privileged life, a very privileged childhood. I obviously identify as a white female. Or I should say not obviously, but I do identify as a white female, just to share, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. With that does come a lot of privilege. I grew up that way as well. I am first generation. My parents are born in Greece. And I also was born to parents that were just about like in their early 40s at a time when that didn't happen either. So I would say some of the interesting parts of my childhood were that my parents were way older than everybody else's parents, in addition to, being, not born in this country. So, those created some experiences that I definitely felt different a little bit from the kids around me. And we had kind of different roles in our house as a result of those things, I would say, than kids that I grew up with that, did not have that experience. But it was a great childhood. My father was a merchant Marine. So he was like home for 6 months, away for 6 months, home for 6 months. So we didn't have the traditional like 9 to 5 household. And my mom, once she had her kids, stopped working. She was an executive at an insurance company in Manhattan, at Equitable. But she left that job once she had my sister. And then when she had me, so she was a stay-at-home mom up until that point, which is really how I grew up. Knowing her professional life was just kind of stories to me. It was never anything I witnessed. I guess those are all some of the things probably that helped mold me. I have a sister 1 year and 9 months older than I am. Everyone thought we were twins growing up because they thought we looked so much alike, but we're very different, I would say, from our makeup. But I guess to the visual eye, people thought we were similar. And of course, it was kind of funny because in the end, I ended up having twins. And that's it, I guess. It was a great childhood. I remember a lot of magic, a lot of fun. Again, I was, very privileged and lucky. I didn't have to really want for anything. And, I was very blessed.
So, so did you speak English as your first language or Greek as your first language?
We grew up speaking Greek in our house for sure. So very much, my culture is very much present in my lives. My parents, always spoke Greek. My mother still every now and then, who's still alive at 91, still sometimes speaks Greek, especially when we're places where she doesn't want anyone to know what we're saying. But I, did go to Greek school all through growing up as well. So I speak, read, and write Greek. Just coincidentally how it worked out, my husband is Greek. So I have 100% Greek kids also, which is strange because I never would have expected that for myself. But because I probably fought my, some of the stereotypes of my culture of, it's a pretty patriarchal existence, being in the Greek culture. And, historically women are not very independent, and, they definitely are not career women. And they are, not raised to be change makers. So, and I think that that's changing now for girls and, women growing up in Greece. But, at my age growing up, that was not the case. So, that probably was something that I always like instinctually grew up fighting, which may have a lot to do with how I ended up where I ended up, as well. But I am very proud of my culture. I really appreciate, that my parents raised us with that kind of dual understanding of the world. I've spent a lot of time in Greece, over the course of my life, and have a lot of family there. And it's beautiful, and obviously the food's amazing.
The food is amazing.
The food is amazing, and the culture, is very rich in history and art and music, and all the things that are important to me definitely are well rooted in all of that. So I'm grateful for it now, but it was an interesting dance kind of growing up a little bit, because I did have the spark to be independent and strong-willed as a child, and my parents didn't necessarily always know what to do with that, because they had a mindset of what a girl should be that was a little more kind of that stereotype of my culture versus I came out as, which they're very proud. They were very proud of me for, and still are very proud of me. So for sure, but it was definitely not a comfort zone for them, the places that I was pushing to go to growing up.
I'm sure, sidebar note, I got to immerse myself a little bit in the culture when years ago I dated somebody with Greek background, 100% Greek, born in Greece, for almost 5 years. So I totally do understand
Yes.
the food for sure. The culture is strong. Music is awesome. So I totally get what you're saying, but I do understand a little bit about that patriarch type of society that they live in. And it must have been interesting to be that go-getter as a girl and seeing all the things that you wanted to accomplish. So are you saying when you were younger, were you more the outspoken child, or were you ever shy?
I don't know that I'd ever be categorized as shy for anyone. That said, I always say, if people were to really know how antisocial I really am, they would be surprised, because I'm a really social being. But my comfort zone, I would say, is, with the small group people, my favorite people with a small group, and with like really authentic dyads or small groups is really my place that I'm my happiest. That said, I can work the room with the best of them. I can go on when I need to. When I was younger, I always thought I wanted to be an actress. I spent a lot of time, doing theater classes and all that. So, which I think has all served me well in life and in my career for sure. But it, which is why I was so connected. I immediately connected to what you're doing, because I believe so strongly in the arts myself, personally. But it definitely, I definitely challenged my family, because, they have this, they definitely had a different mindset. But I would say from a pretty young age, and, I always say I can remember being on the playground in kindergarten, I can like see the scene in the schoolyard that I like jumped in to help somebody. And, as I always say to my kids, there's helping people and there's hurting people. I'm definitely a helping person. I was wired to be a helping person, at a very young age. I don't think there was ever any other path for me. I always, my mindset, my spirit, my energy, my vibrations, everything have always been on a very straight path from that perspective. The decisions and where it took me, might not have always been so straight, because I don't think there's a straight line anywhere, as I always say, but there's never been any question of my calling. It never occurred to me to go into the for-profit world. It never occurred to me to do anything different than what I do. I think I was born a helper, and that's how I will be throughout my life.
So when you were growing up, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I definitely wanted to be an actress. I mean, there was no doubt about it. That was definitely my mindset. That said, very early on, I became very interested in politics. I became very interested in writing, poetry, using words, speech writing, all of that. And doing, student council and, when I was in school, volunteering, peer support, mentorship, all of those things, I just immediately that's where I gravitated, to. And again, I think anyone who knew me growing up doesn't look at what I'm doing now and think, well, that's not what I would have expected. I think they would think the exact opposite, So yeah, I think that theater was probably where I thought I wanted to be. And I still, obviously I have a significant and tremendous love, for the theater. But as I said, I've ended up realizing, I think that a lot of, kind of stepping into a role and stepping into a space and kind of taking it over and commanding it, which I think comes with, when you're, acting, is very much, what I need to do to be effective in, my life in terms of my work. So everything I learned and, all of that kind of came along, for the ride and ended up supporting, where I've ended up for sure.
I think that's that. Yeah. And as you said, being in that world and running an organization that's all about the arts, it serves people in so many ways outside of what you think you're doing. And that happens, that's in general. Yeah. What you're doing today, you don't realize because you don't know what is going to happen in 3 weeks from now, is preparing you for what's going to happen a week from now, 3 weeks from now.
For sure. And I know I was just reading an article, how they were saying how, obviously we've done such a push to try to get children to be doing STEM activities, but they were saying the only thing that's actually even more impactful than STEM is the arts. So when you bring children into the arts, whether it's music or theater, is actually from framing your brain. So I do think that a lot of my skills, which are my superpowers, for sure, in terms of the work I do, come from that mindset that I gained from my love and interest in that otherworldliness that comes from theater and the arts, which is, I am a great creator. I think very, very big. Nothing to me, there's never no is really never something that occurs to me, or can't is not something that ever really occurs to me. Anything is possible. It's just a matter of figuring out how to make it happen. And the creativity of reworking it and the tenacity, comes from, to me, all came from that interest and that world, because, there's no other story, right? We know better than, what actors have to go through to get roles, and, how much, disappointment and, the up and down of all of that, but kind of staying focused and energized and on point. And I think all of those skills came with me for the ride, where I ended up, and I utilized them. But, they're definitely I use them all daily.
Absolutely.
Daily.
On March 24th, today is the day is launching the inaugural Challenge Yourself, Disrupt the Status Quo International Virtual Changemakers Forum. This unprecedented event provides attendees with the opportunity to personally connect with fellow everyday changemakers, CNN heroes, TEDx speakers, CEOs, entrepreneurs, authors, and more. The event's keynote speaker is known as the Global Ambassador for Changemakers, Henry DeCio Jr. Your ticket purchase matters, as 20% of the proceeds will go to the Applaud Our Kids Foundation. Thank you to Investors Bank, Catalyst for Change sponsor, Create Change, Disrupt the Status Quo, Ignite Your Spark breakout session sponsor, Pam 10. Scholarship sponsor, New Jersey Business and Industry Association. Special mention to all the Inspire Change sponsors. Go to todayistheday.liveit.com.
So I know exactly what you mean about can't take no for an answer. You're going to make it happen. You're going to get creative. That's why I think we got along from the first moment we met, because I am that person too. But there are those days, right, that come up. I'm sure you've experienced them, that, you're getting hit left and right. It's like you're dodging, the rapid fire of Christ, fires happening all over the place, especially running an organization. What keeps you grounded during those times and keeps you focused? Because there'll be listeners out there who will say, I don't have exactly what she has. There are days that, that become weeks, that become months, where I'm not feeling like I have that tenacity. It fades away. How do you keep yours going?
Well, I think, look, I have some skills that I have definitely perfected and developed over the years for myself that are, and then I have some rituals. So I guess, so from a skill perspective, the two things, and these are not going to sound fancy, but the two things that I think have helped me be successful in just daily life, forget my career, is one, I self-talk. Right. I have conversations with myself that are really healthy. So if I'm having a bad moment or I'm feeling overwhelmed, I stop and I say to myself, you know what, this is a tough day. You could have done this day better, but you did the best that you could. And, I'm kind to myself. I've learned that you have to be kind to yourself. I've learned that I have to be my own cheerleader, because although there's a lot of people around me who love me, everyone gets caught up in their own stuff, right? And so they're not always thinking about what you need as much as you would want everyone to be, we would interrelatedly want to be in that space with each other. Sometimes people are very focused, on where they're at. So I have to be focused on me from that perspective. And so I have to give myself the pep talks, be the best cheerleader, be, that comforting voice, that, maternal figure. I'm grateful I still have my mother at 91, but at 91, she's not able to be, she's, I have to be the maternal figure for her now. I care for her. She lives with me and I take care of her. So it's different, so I have to do all that for myself, and I've learned how to do it. And I pop in as quickly as I need to when there's chaos happening. The other thing is I'm big on visualization. That is key for me. I definitely meditate and have a whole bunch of, other, do yoga, all those other kind of, important practices as well. But for me, if I can't see it, I can't do it. And so even before this podcast, when I know I have to get ready to do something, I just for a minute stop and just imagine it going the way that I, want to see it go. So I can kind of create the pathway in my mind and then travel myself there. So when I wake up in the morning, I think about my day and how I want it to go. And then I just start, from there. So I have created space to visualize everything I need to do, and then I do it. And if I can't see it, I have learned that I can't do it. And then sometimes that is really just because it's not the right thing for me. And I've learned to trust that intuition as well. So those, I think, are the skills that I've developed, the self-talk and the visualization, that have been key for me to get through the worst, and the bad days. But the rituals for me, are, again, fairly basic. I like green tea. I make myself green tea daily. I drink loose leaf green tea. It's the whole process of scooping the tea, putting it, into a kind of an old school teapot, brewing it, having that moment where I wait for it, and just creating that time, the warmth. And I'm very specific. I call it dirt green tea. I don't like any flowery. I just like the good old fashioned, grassy, and that the taste, the warmth of it going down, the process of making it, is relaxing for me. Dark chocolate is something that always just, calms me and soothes me and feels like a gift if I'm, feeling like I, need a treat or deserve a treat, whatever category it is. So, again, silly little rituals like that. But, they are centering because I do them daily, and, I fit them in to my day, no matter how crazy I've been. I will say over the last, I'm not always so great. Look, I don't do balance well. I don't think balance exists, by the way. That's a concept I actually do not think exists. But, I don't have the whole, I love the whole self-care discussion that people are obsessed with. I don't, self-care is something I can't say that I necessarily always do so well. I do way too much. I juggle a lot, between being a mom, being a daughter, caring for her, aging mother, being a wife, being a CEO, being an adjunct professor, all the, being a friend, being other things. do too much. I mean, that's just the reality. So all I can do though is be here. I would say the good old Ram Dass quote, be here now. I focus on what's in front of me and then I move on to the next thing. I don't get caught up in yesterday. I don't look ahead to tomorrow. I just try to focus on what's in front of me. And that has always helped me as well.
That goes very well with the ending mantra that I say on every single podcast. So that's exactly right. We can't go backwards. We don't own tomorrow yet anyway. So we might as well be here in the present. I love what you said though. You say you don't do balance, but when I was listening to you and all the things between the skills and the things that you do, you may not think you're doing balance, but when I hear you right on the other side, I'm like, that sounds lovely. Like that you have to see your path. You can't go into that path. I mean, that is self-care, right? Because you know that you're not honoring yourself if you can't visually see it. Manifestation and visualization, I 100%, not everybody's into that, but I can tell you it works. It totally works. I'm totally on that ride with you. So I appreciate you sharing your rituals because not everybody, some people may not have any or want to add some. And now you can, you've given them suggestion, but it also gives permission, right? Because sometimes we need to hear somebody else say.
Yeah. And I have to say the other thing that I do daily is I burn essential oils next to me at all times. So that's the other thing for me that is very grounding. And it's ritualistic for me too. But when I have this, whatever the smell is, if I want grapefruit or cinnamon or, fill in the blank, whatever it is, it brings me to a mindset and a place that I need to be. So, there's a lot of, look, I love to listen to CEOs talking about all the great reading lists that they have and the podcasts that they listen to and all of that too. My life is such that it's a little chaotic, at times. I'm doing a lot and I could do less. I could be more focused. I could do things better. But I try to just, leave this world, leave each day better than the day before and knowing that I want to do better tomorrow. And that just, it's just like that basic, could my kids maybe, especially during the last 2 years of COVID, have less screen time? Absolutely. Could they, but I make sure that there's as much magic in their days and in stuff, that we plan and do together so that it balances, things out for them.
And women deal with a lot of that. I'm not saying men don't. I'm just going to say women.
Different. Yeah.
A little bit more than maybe I should, but I am generalizing because I'm a mom too. And I went through all of that and my kids are older now. Is that balance between the guilt, right? Feel guilty if you're spending too much time with the kids because you've got 9 fires happening over here, or the opposite, right? You're spending too much time at work and the kids have too much screen time because you need that to be kind of keeping them busy while you're working on 5 Zoom calls. So it is about, finding that balance, which I agree with you, is what you create because nobody's coming and knocking on your door to say, hey, by the way, it's time for you to go, listen to some meditation, guided meditation. It's not going to happen. We have to do it. And somehow society has made it where we feel this guilt on either side. It's all of us. I haven't met one podcast guest yet, and I've done over 70 interviews. Any of the women who have children say the same thing. That part of trying to find that balance, it's not easy. It's not like something you can take off the shelf and just tell somebody to do. Yeah,
no, I have to say, I think that guilt and those feelings of never doing enough or needing to do it differently or better. I think that that's human nature, if you will. I think, the piece though, is that being kind to yourself and not allowing it to become dysfunctional or hurt you, because the messages that we say in our heads, and obviously some of them are, historic because they may have been messages that were passed down to us. And those are the tapes we're like replaying. And obviously I'm a social worker by training. So I very much, believe, in doing the work that you need to do on yourself. But the reality of it is, what you say to yourself has a direct impact on how you function. And so, and also your life experiences. I have to say, I have been lucky. And been blessed and live with privilege and all of those things. So, it's not as if I, can say I've pulled myself out of, a situation that I've come to, but it's just the skills that I've learned, to get to where I am today, whatever that's worth, however that's helpful to anyone. But I just really do think that the basic conversation you have with yourself in your head has everything to do with, what you can accomplish each day.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you sharing all of that. I think that's really important for people to hear. And like I said, we want to connect with the people, the humans, that are behind the Zoom screens here.
Eli Manning, former New York Giants quarterback.
Leading a team, you learn pretty fast. You're only as good as the people who have your back. Lately, my goals are more focused on business, and having Investors Bank as my banking partner feels the same way. They have my back too. They're there for me with the resources and online tools I need for whatever success lies ahead. For what I do now and what I'll do next, I count on Investors Bank.
Visit investorsbank.com or stop by a branch. Member FDIC.
But I also want to talk a little bit about your incredible work because, you talk about that you lived with all this privilege, but then you've spent a long time fighting for those who don't have that privilege, fighting for those, when it comes to human trafficking, when it comes to sexual assault. What started you on that path to not everybody follows that path. We all I'm a helper too. Same thing. That wasn't my path. What brought you to that path?
I think, as I said early on, I realized a couple things. One, I realized that I had a voice, which is why I think I work so hard to help others find theirs, in my work. But I realized that I had a voice. I realized that if I used it properly, that it made a difference and made change. And I realized that other people didn't necessarily have the same voice or didn't know how to use theirs, and that, I could help others, and then they were in a better place. And then as a result, we're all in a better place, So I figured that out early on, and I don't know, again, I don't know what else to say other than, I knew my calling early. It was one of those things. I've always been a bit of an empath and intuitive. It's, as a young kid, I knew I was different, but assimilated well into what was around me. But I just knew what my gifts were and, focused on using them to help others. And so that's, really how it evolved into my work. In terms of my work, I was an activist in college, I quickly, jumped in, on whether it was environmental causes, which were important to me, or social justice causes when I was in college, and, causes around, inequities that were kind of being created because of tuition, getting out of hand. And, so I immediately jumped in and used my voice in all of those spaces all through college as well. And then after college, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do exactly. I obviously wanted to be an actress, but my parents were not on board with that plan. So I said, okay, well, then I guess I'll go into doing government work and, politics. And so I ended up working for an assemblyman and as a legislative aide, which, again, not so different than the theater world. And, but, it was a real education in terms of seeing how much need there was out there and what different populations needed support. So I think it did help me create a mindset of where I could be impactful. I stayed in that space for about a year or two, and then I went to graduate school for social work, I think I immediately gravitated towards community organizing type of social work, then doing kind of clinical one-on-one social work, again, because that's where my mindset was. I do have a big picture mind, and I do have a planning mind. So, and I have learned that relationships are everything, and connecting people is where the power is, for them individually and for all of us collectively. So that's how it happened. But in terms of my working in sexual violence, funny enough, my first job out of, when I was in graduate school, when I graduated, I did some internships in human services. And then my first job was working for the prosecutor's office in Bergen County. And I was assigned to doing sex crimes work with child abuse victims, specifically child sexual abuse victims at the time. And, I always knew I wanted to work with kids or seniors, as I always say, which again, they're not so different as populations. When I, when I decided, okay, I'm going to go into social work. And then, so the rest was kind of written. It just ended up being where I fell. And then most of my career ended up there. My work at the YW, I think kind of evolved everything I had been building on, because it took my work in sexual violence that I had been doing for years. It took a lot of the community building and organizing that I had been doing for years, and broadened it exponentially in terms of the intersectionality of that work with empowering women and, of course, eliminating racism, which, each year I can say I've learned more and more in terms of understanding that, until everyone is equal, none of us, it impacts all of us. And, it has to be my fight as well as, everyone's fight to end racism. And that, I have I have an active part in that and have had to learn and understand about my privilege and, how I can be part of, making change there. And I'm still learning, for sure. But I'd say the last few years, that's really been where I have focused. And obviously it's a core of our work at the YWCA of Northern New Jersey, for sure. From our programs and the impact that we have in the community. But I do spend a lot of time talking about supporting, women involving in leadership, supporting, women of color, and, how to help create equity across the board, for sure. And, just, our world is in a very sad place right now. There's a lot of bright spots, for sure, and there's definitely been progress, but there is an urgency. There's people's lives at stake every single day. And, when I think about my friends who are not white, but have kids the same age as mine, and that their children are having a very different lived experience than my children are having, just because of their skin color, just because of, their race, it's just not right. And I very much have grown up from the time I was in the playground as in kindergarten to now, is that if it's just not right, then there has to be something we do about it, So I've, I guess been very motivated on that journey of figuring out what there is to do about it. And quite frankly, a big part of my role is just helping use my privilege, helping use our organization, helping use the platforms that I have to support others who really need to be at the forefront, of, people of color, women of color, to support them. That's really where I am, and, try to be as much as I can these days, and bringing others that have my lived experience, hopefully, along to that space as well.
What a beautiful footprint you're creating. We'll talk about that in a few minutes when I ask you the last question a little bit. But it's incredible what you're creating, but I don't know that everybody knows what a YWCA does. And I think it's really important that we share the work there.
Sure. Well, YWCA USA is a national organization. There's hundreds of associations across the country. We all are a little bit unique in terms of serving our communities, but we all have the same mission of eliminating racism and empowering women. We just manifest differently, probably, for each association. Our Northern New Jersey Association, which, as you said at the start, serves, 5 counties, Bergen, Essex, Hudson, Morris, and Passaic counties here in New Jersey, which is what we look at as Northern New Jersey. So we do our work in 3 areas. Gender equity is one, racial justice and social justice, is another. And the third place is, safety and support. So we do a significant amount of childcare, a lot of health and wellness programs for seniors. We run the sexual violence program for Bergen County, which is a state designated program for New Jersey. which is a hotline, counseling services, and various education and supports. We do a lot of programming to empower women, help them get back to work, help them start small businesses, specifically focused programs as well for women of color to be able to support their development in every way, health and wellness initiatives for women, some specifically for moms, some specifically for business owners. We do a significant amount of work for girls to create empowered young women so they, start way younger than I, did in a more focused way for sure. STEM programs, camps, social justice mindsets for them. And then our racial justice work, which is, really around, educating people on, everything we need to learn and unlearn about racism and, really moving forward with an anti-racist and anti-oppression mindset for our existence. In addition to, being very mindful of racial disparities, systemic racism and issues. And so we do that through, various programs in our communities. Like, for example, right now we're working with school districts to help elementary school teachers have language with race. We're launching a program as well shortly for mental health staff so that they can help in their helping professions, when they're working with race. I do a lot of work and coaching for nonprofit executives on how to create anti-racist organizations. And we have a platform like, yours as well, called YWTV, where we, bring voice to a lot of important conversations in our community. So, it's wonderful work. We have an amazing team, and, our work is urgent, as I always say. And I am grateful. I've just coming into my 11th year in the organization, which I can't even believe because it kind of went very quickly. But it's, like you with this podcast, it's my great honor. I've met so many wonderful people. I have learned so much personally and evolved. And, also aware of how much more there is to do. And, continue to feel energized to do it. And fortunately, my creative spirit, which, my team, fortunately, their creative spirit, my creative spirit together, we've been able to, I think, have some real impact in our community with our work.
That's, so it's the work that you're doing, the people that you're impacting, so important. How do people find you? I think it's important to share that.
Well, our website, YWCANJ.org, is a great place to just, learn about our programs. Personally, I'm on LinkedIn. We're on all social media channels. That's a great place to see us in action. If you follow us on Facebook or Instagram, Twitter, any of these places, you'll see the work that we're doing daily. I always say there's a program for anyone in the community. And just because we're the YWCA, we are, supportive to, we are an inclusive community, from that perspective. And we do encourage everyone to, come out and partake and learn about our programs.
No, that it is so important. And thank you for having me on as a guest on YWT.
That was a fun conversation.
It was very fun. It was super, super fun, just like this. And connection is just, people don't realize the importance of connection and doing it organically, authentically, without anything. When we first met, there was no, what can we do for each other type of ego-driven connection. It's, that's why I think, like you said, what's happening with you, with YWTV and what I'm doing, we're just doing it to share stories. We just want to help people in any way that we can, continue to do the important change-making work that they're doing out there. And I don't, I think that's something that I find very important to teach other people, is to let your egos go and just create authentic connections, because you just know that those are going to last.
Well, I mean, it really, our relationships are really all, we have, and they really are based on people's trust and people's consistency, and I think that just over the course of my career, I, was able to, move around to different counties and, a few different places, although at most places I've stayed for a chunk of time like I have now. but the reason I think I have been successful is I've kind of collected people over the years. As I always say, you meet people. Of course, life doesn't necessarily afford you the opportunity to stay in touch with everyone always, but as long as you have genuine, authentic relationships, usually you can pick them up whenever, life creates that crossing again. And, you can pick back up where you were, catch up and, move forward, from there. And, you keep people in your head. So when there's opportunities, you collect their stories. So when you think of an opportunity to link them, that you can do that as well. I mean, being a connector for people is also, one of my superpowers, is because, you carry people with you. And again, I've been so fortunate. And I know we've talked about this as being, a place where we intersect. I've been so fortunate, all the people that I've met over the course of my life. And, there has to be a reason, that you have these moments. And honestly, I really never waste time in conversations. When I was in high school, I worked at a library, and, just those moments where I would like to take people's books at the desk. I always had authentic conversations, even in those few moments, and, I just think that there's really no point in engaging with anyone unless it's really going to, be, how are you? You never know what kind of, again, silly and simple, but a kind observation and sharing it, or, letting someone know how they've impacted you, all have the ability to really change someone's day, which could change someone's life, change that moment that they're in, flip them into a different place. Especially right now, I mean, we're seeing such just the way that the news has been. Of course, it's always been a statistic, but we've seen so many high profile suicides in just a short, period of time. We don't always know where people are at. You think where they're at because people are using whatever skills that they have that they think they're reading someone's situation. The reality is you don't know where someone's at and what load they're carrying and how heavy things are. And so it is really important, really, to be kind, supportive, and, connect with people, because it really can save somebody's life.
Oh, absolutely. Some people say to me, I'm not a change maker. I don't do anything. I don't have anything that I do. I just living my life, doing the best I can. And I said, well, you go into a store and you ask somebody how they are and you really mean it and you listen to them finish how they are doing, or you smile at them and say, thank you, have a great day. You could have changed their day just by being that person who made eye contact with them and asked them, how are you? And listen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think too, when someone is able to do that for you, again, I was, unique, I guess, because I always say, and I say this a lot to my students when I'm talking to them, or, to folks or friends when I'm, coaching, whether it's formally or informally, is we all have a little voice inside of us. You just have to get quiet enough to listen to it. And the voice will never steer you wrong. What happens is you don't want to listen to it. And that's sometimes where we make, different, decisions and path, movements. But, at the end of the day, I was lucky because I always knew my path, but having someone reflect something back to you sometimes can really, help illuminate something for you, and that you really needed that aha. So it is so important. We all have a skill. The sooner that you can, take that time and, do that, create that quiet space a little bit to figure it out. All the jobs that I've had as in my career, and as I said, I mean, I can count the organizations I worked for in one hand because I stay most places for a good chunk of years before I go to the next. I've come into organizations that either were total startups with nothing, or organizations that needed overhauls because they were just not relevant, or not doing what they were supposed to and needed a full makeover. So I learned about myself early on. Like, I'm a marathon relay race runner. I am not a sprint person. So you just need to know those things about yourself. And so when people have come to me with opportunities, it's places that do need transformation, because people know that I will go the long haul. I will not jump when things get tough, not because, and I'm not judging anyone who does, but for me, I know that true organizational change, true, cultural change, true institutional change, true systemic change, they're not for the faint-hearted. And if people keep leaving, then it's never going to happen. So you need someone to really be that guiding force. And as long as I feel that I really have the vision for what is needed, and I've embraced that vision and locked into it, then I can go do the time, to see it through. And, I can say comfortably that every place I've been from a career perspective, there was a vision. They were never easy, but they were always, clear to me, and I was able to bring them to a place and then pass them off before I went to the next place.
Well, no, but that's, and that's the thing is about knowing who you are. Some people are marathon runners, some people are sprinters. And as long as you know who you are and what you're going to be about.
Yes. And they're all essential. There's a place, there is a place for everyone, in this world. And, when people do feel like, I'm not sure what my powers are, what my superpowers are, I just always say you really do need to get a little quiet and listen and think, figure them out, and then figure them out how they pertain to where you're operating. And if you're operating in the space that makes sense for you. Again, I've been very lucky. I just immediately, I figured it out young and I went there. But, I always joke, I don't know, maybe I'm not joking, but I'd love to open a tea shop, a place for community where people could come together, and sit together and which is totally different from what I do on one hand, and probably not different at all in other ways. So, but, it's good to have dreams. It's good to have aspirations for sure. It's good to have goals for yourself to work toward, and, whatever and however you are and whatever phase in your life. At some phases in your life, when I was single, didn't have kids, I was able to do things differently than how I do now. But I think being adaptable and flexible also is key to success. If you're just so rigid that you need things to be in one way, that gets challenging, because life is never, every day is a new adventure. As I, sometimes say it, every day is a new adventure. And sometimes I say every day is a new adventure, so it depends what mood I'm in, but, every day is a new adventure. And if you're not able to just take each day as it comes, and, then sucks for you, because, that's not changing. The only constant is change, that is it.
There's two things I talk about on this podcast all the time. And one is we have to let go of judgment of ourselves and others and allow our vulnerability to come out, because that is how we grow, right? And that's how we connect, because when we get to that vulnerable place within ourselves, we have an opportunity to listen. And then when we get with our vulnerable place with others, we have an opportunity to connect. And those are things that a lot of people are more rigid about because they're afraid to be hurt. And so that's just something that I talk about on, as many podcasts as I can, because that, that unfortunately many of us put the armor on of our titles and different things in order to protect ourselves. But I think, what you're saying and what I'm saying is exactly the same thing. That is just, not the best way to connect with others.
No, and titles, look, sure, I may be a CEO, but, part of, I will not negate that I am part of my success, but the other part of my success is I was smart enough to surround myself with talent. I have a great team, and that's not to say that there are not times that I really have a very clear vision for things, but, I also, and they know, there's always room for a conversation, and, a lot of what we do is a group effort. And so that's why I always credit them and, stand as much behind them as they'll let me push them in front as well. Because I don't need to be in the spotlight all the time. I know that that's my role as CEO of my organization and in the work I do. And I'm happy to step into it, to use my power and privilege in any way, to do good. But I also, I don't believe the hype. But I will say I've used the hype. I recently in this last year, one of the things I received a phone call from a mentor and a friend who was talking about some of the atrocities happening at the Edmond Mahan Women's Correctional Facility, where prisoners were, being sexually assaulted over and over again by guards, within the prison there, and nobody was, although there was a group of people trying to bring attention and do it, even with a lot of what was happening there being known, that things were not moving along as quickly as they could, and each day another atrocity was happening. And I remember getting this phone call on like a Thursday morning, and by like lunchtime I was still thinking about it, and I'm thinking to myself, there has to be something I can do. I mean, there has to be something I can do. And then by 3 o'clock, I'm like, well, I've been on Senator Loretta Weinberg's, list of the most powerful women of New Jersey. I mean, I have to be able to use that for something, right? So I, by the end of the day, started calling people and saying, let's have a press conference. Let's have a press conference. And, let's bring attention to this so that we can put pressure on the governor, on the legislature, to do something here. And by Monday morning, we had a press conference with 2 lead senators, 2 lead assemblywomen who were all, on the bills. We had survivors who, had the unfortunate experience of being sexually assaulted while they were in the prison, sharing their stories. We had other key community leaders come together. My amazing team, fortunately, jumped with me, to organize the entire thing. And let me just say that group had done a significant amount of work before that. I'm not at all taking credit for that. I just knew that we had a team, we had a platform, we had the ability to organize people to share the story, and put more pressure. And, shortly thereafter, there was some real action and, with that facility, which now we're finally seeing, movement on. So, that was one of those moments. And I actually was talking with Senator Weinberg right before her retirement. We had her on and doing a tribute show to her. And I shared that story with her, that, I think to myself, sometimes you get these designations, which is, always lovely and wonderful. But in the end, they are just words if you don't use them in some, powerful and impactful way. So we can all believe the hype, but it's really about your actions in life. It's not at all about the words. It's nothing about what you read, about my bio or anyone else's. It's all about what you do and your actions. That's
Absolutely.
for you.
You could have sat and done nothing, even with the title and all of that, but you decided to do something, and it's about the person you are. And that's what's the most important.
Pam 10 is a leader in IT enterprise solutions and staffing. They are driven to transform their clients' business performances. They do this every day by providing their clients with the best services and products. Products like BizLego, an online community platform, and Colear, a unique learning management system. They also transform the lives of women and children through their associated nonprofits, SheTech, which supports women in and joining the technology field, and Sofkin, support organization for kids in need. Pam 10, technology for social good. Go to pam10.com for more information.
I could talk to you for hours, Helen. I can tell you that, and I definitely want to have you on again because there's so much to offer. And I'm glad you shared that last story because I think it was important for people to hear how you do spring into action when it is needed. Because we read a lot about, and you talked a lot about, kind of things in abstract, but that was a great example of really taking the time to make a difference. And you've done that many times in your career.
Well, and we all can. So anyone listening, I would just say to you, everyone is a change maker. Everyone has the power to impact their life and someone else's life in the most positive, powerful way, and never think otherwise. There's always something that you can do.
Absolutely. So last question, what is the footprint you're creating right now that you want to leave behind?
Oh, I think, it's this. I mean, I just each day want to try to leave the world a little bit better than the day before, as hokey as that sounds. I don't really have any grand plan other than that. I mean, I felt this way before I had kids. I feel this way even more now that I have kids. But I don't need any monuments or, my name up on the side of a building or anything like that. But I already know, I know that I've impacted people's lives positively. I also know that there's more to do, and I hope I can continue to do that. And, it's the small things that end up rolling together to be the big thing for me.
Beautiful. I want to thank you so much for sharing your heart with me today and the audience. And I look forward to having you back on for updates and more stories. So thank you again, Helen.
You are welcome. Thank you so much for having me. And it's wonderful that you have this opportunity for people to come share, because I really do think that, we are beings that are inspired by the stories we hear. So having opportunities to hear them firsthand definitely helps create space for that in all of our lives.
Oh, absolutely. Humans need and thrive off of connection. It's a human need. So thank you again. I'm going to say what I always say, and Helen, we kind of said it before, but I'm going to say it again here, which is today is the day. You cannot go back to yesterday, and you do not yet own tomorrow. So what small or large step are you going to take today to get yourself closer to your goals? Again, thank you so much to Helen. Oh my God, now I can't say your last name. Look at that.
Archontou. It's okay. I got it.
I know. I totally went. The whole thing went. I had it in the beginning. Archontou, for coming on, CEO of the YWCA of Northern New Jersey. So happy to be with you today. Have a great week, everyone.